Chuck Norris.
When he does a push-up, he doesn't lift himself, he pushes the world down.
Delta 2, this is Delta 1, over.
So what's the plan, boss?
Surprise party.
Just like the old days.
You got it.
Chuck Norris is known for epic fights, but no one expected this. When he stepped up to a piano, people laughed, even mocked him.
As well as I possibly can. You know, I've had to give up my film career.
But seconds later, total silence. You could hear a pin drop. What did Chuck do that left a room full of pros stunned? Get ready, because this unexpected moment flipped the script completely. Opening scene. It was a cool October night in Los Angeles. Inside the Cavendish Conservatory, everything looked fancy. Golden lights filled the room. Guests in black suits and long dresses sipped drinks and listened to soft music. This event was held to honor Vladimir Horowitz, a famous piano player who had turned 61. He was loved by fans around the world. People came to celebrate him and donate money to support classical music. Chuck Norris walked in looking completely different from the rest. He was 25 years old and worked as a martial arts teacher. One of his rich students had invited him, and Chuck came along as a guest. While most guests wore perfect suits and shiny shoes, Chuck wore jeans, a flannel shirt, and cowboy boots. He didn't look nervous or out of place. Still, many people looked his way, surprised to see someone like him at such a high-class event. Chuck stood near the back of the room. He was calm and quiet. After a while, he found himself near a grand piano. A small group of guests came over and started talking. Someone asked Chuck what he did. He said he taught karate. Then, in a relaxed voice, he added that he played piano sometimes, just for fun. Little did they know, their laughter was about to backfire in the most unexpected way. Chuck was about to show them something they'd never forget. The mockery begins. The music kept playing in the background as people laughed, talked, and sipped drinks. Chuck stayed near the grand piano. He hadn't said much, but his earlier comment still hung in the air. Some guests had already passed it around like gossip at a dinner table. One man was paying closer attention than the rest. His name was Gerald Stipe. He called himself a composer, though most of his work never made it far. Gerald liked being the smartest man in the room. Seeing Chuck standing near the piano in jeans and boots made his pride itch. Chuck didn't speak like a musician or dress like one. That was enough for Gerald to strike. With a smug smile, Gerald said loudly, "He probably punches the keys like he's breaking bricks." People nearby burst out laughing. A few others joined in from across the room. The joke spread fast. Someone repeated it to another group, and soon more people were chuckling. Chuck had become the joke of the night. Horowitz heard it too. He turned his head slightly, watching the group. But unlike the others, he didn't laugh. His face showed interest more than anything else. He kept his eyes on Chuck. Chuck stood there, calm as ever. He didn't blink. He didn't frown. He didn't even look at Gerald. He kept his hands to his sides and his eyes steady. He looked like he had seen this kind of behavior before and didn't care to play along. His silence was stronger than any insult. It made some people stop laughing. Chuck gave them nothing to feed on. No anger, no embarrassment, just peace. The music kept playing, but the mood had changed. Something about the way Chuck stood made people feel like something bigger was about to happen. But Chuck's calm reaction was about to change everything. Someone important was watching, and he had plans. The challenge emerges. The laughter had faded. The music in the background now felt softer. Vladimir Horowitz stepped forward and made his way to Chuck. He didn't look upset. He looked calm and curious. The crowd around them grew quiet again. People leaned in, wanting to hear what would happen next. Horowitz stood in front of Chuck and asked him how he learned to play the piano. Chuck kept his voice low and steady. "My mother taught me," he said. "We had an old upright piano in the living room. She loved to play and sing. I would sit beside her and copy what she did. She passed away when I was 18. Playing reminds me of her. That's why I never stopped." Horowitz nodded slowly. He looked thoughtful. Then he said, "Having feelings is good, but they don't make someone a real musician. Chuck stayed still. He gave a quiet nod. He didn't argue. He didn't try to prove anything. His face showed no anger and no pride. He accepted the words the same way he had accepted the laughter before. That calm look never left him. Horowitz kept watching. He saw something in Chuck that he didn't expect. Most people would have tried to impress him by now. They would have talked about training, talent, or dreams. Chuck said none of that. He stood with quiet strength, and that made people notice him more. The guests who had laughed earlier now stood silent. The joke had ended. Gerald looked away. A new feeling was filling the room. It was slow but strong. Horowitz placed his hand gently on the piano beside them. His eyes stayed on Chuck. After a moment, he spoke again. "Play something." Chuck gave a small nod. No one clapped. No one spoke. But every person in the room was watching. What happened next left everyone speechless. The room was about to witness something truly special. The unexpected performance. Chuck walked slowly toward the grand piano. His boots made a soft sound on the polished floor. He didn't look nervous. He didn't smile. He moved with the same calmness he had shown all night. People stepped back to give him space. No one laughed now. The room was still. The lights above the piano gave off a warm glow. Chuck sat down, adjusted the bench, and looked at the keys. He placed his hands on the piano and paused. For a few seconds, there was only silence. Then he began to play. The first notes were soft and gentle. His fingers moved smoothly, like they had done this many times before. The sound filled the room, but it didn't shout. It spoke in a quiet, honest way. There were no flashy moves, no fast tricks, just real music. Guests looked around at each other. Some stood frozen, others closed their eyes and listened. Gerald, the man who had made fun of Chuck, now stared in disbelief. Horowitz stood still, watching with sharp eyes but a calm face. Chuck played a piece that sounded like something from the past. It had sadness in it, but also peace. The notes felt simple, but they carried weight. Every part of the song seemed to come from deep inside. He finished the last note and lifted his hands. The room stayed quiet for a moment longer. Then someone clapped. Slowly, others joined in. It was not loud or wild, but it was full of respect. Chuck stood up. He gave a small nod, then stepped away from the piano. Horowitz walked toward him again. This time, his face had changed. There was a soft smile. He didn't need to say much. His eyes said enough. He had heard something true. And now, so had everyone else. But this was just the beginning of something incredible. The night was far from over. The unexpected mentorship. After Chuck finished playing, Horowitz stood still for a moment. He looked at Chuck with new respect. Something in Chuck's playing had caught his attention. It was not about skill or speed. It was about feeling. Chuck played from the heart. That kind of honesty could not be taught. Horowitz reached into his coat and pulled out a folded sheet of music. He handed it to Chuck. It was Rachmaninoff's Prelude in C-sharp minor. The piece was long, bold, and powerful. Many trained pianists found it hard to play well. "I want you to learn this," Horowitz said. "Come back in 1 month." Chuck looked down at the sheet, then back at Horowitz. He gave a small nod. He didn't ask questions. He didn't seem afraid. He understood what this meant. This was a chance to grow into something more. Horowitz did not offer help or tips. He didn't promise anything. He gave Chuck a challenge and waited to see what he would do with it. The people around them could feel that something special had happened. Chuck had come into the room as a guest. He now stood there as someone with purpose. The quiet man in boots was no longer being laughed at. He was being seen. Chuck held the sheet music carefully, as if it meant more than paper. To him, it was a goal. It was a new kind of fight, one where the battlefield was made of black and white keys. He looked Horowitz in the eyes and said, "I'll be back." Those words were simple, but his tone said everything. He was ready to try. He would give it all he had. And so, the training began. Now the real work began, and Chuck was about to surprise himself. What he did next would test every limit. The training montage. Chuck went back to his normal life, but something had changed. During the day, he still taught karate at his studio. His students saw the same calm, focused teacher. But at night, after everyone left, Chuck stayed behind. He placed the Rachmaninoff music on his old upright piano and began to work. He had 1 month to learn the piece. He took it step by step. He didn't try to rush. He broke the song into smaller parts and learned them slowly. He repeated each section until it felt natural. He used the same methods he taught in martial arts. Slow practice, sharp focus, no wasted movement. Some nights he tied a blindfold over his eyes. This helped him feel the keys without looking. Other nights, he turned on a metronome to keep his rhythm steady. He treated each page of the music like a form. Each note had to be clean. Each phrase had to have meaning. Chuck practiced late into the night. He would sometimes fall asleep next to the piano, wake up, and start again. His hands got sore, but he pushed through it. His body was strong from years of training. Now, he was building strength in a new way. Friends called and asked him to come out. He told them he was busy. He didn't explain. He just kept going. He marked each day on a calendar. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, until the whole month had passed. On the 30th night, he sat at the piano one last time. He played the full piece from beginning to end. His fingers moved with control. His heart stayed steady. When he finished, he closed the lid and stood up. His mind was clear. The next day, he would return to the conservatory. 30 days later, it was time to prove what he'd learned. But would all that practice be enough? The private audition. 1 month later, Chuck walked back into the Cavendish Conservatory. He wore the same boots and denim as before, but this time, he looked different. He moved with quiet purpose. His mind was clear. The Rachmaninoff piece was no longer just sheet music. It had become part of him. Horowitz was waiting in a small practice room. No crowd, no noise, just the two of them and a grand piano. Chuck sat down and took a deep breath. He placed his hands on the keys and began to play. The piece came out strong and steady. It wasn't perfect. Some notes were a little late, others a little rushed, but the heart was there. Every section showed care and focus. The emotion was honest. The discipline showed in how he held each phrase, how he never lost control, even when the music got hard. When Chuck finished, he didn't look up right away. He stayed still, letting the final note fade into the quiet room. Horowitz gave a small nod. "You kept your word," he said. "You worked hard. I can hear it in your playing." Chuck stood and gave a soft, "Thank you." Horowitz looked thoughtful. "I'm holding another benefit in 2 weeks," he said. "Come perform. Play this piece. Let others hear what you've built." Chuck paused. He hadn't expected this. Playing in front of Horowitz was one thing. Playing in front of hundreds of people was something else. "I didn't plan on performing for a crowd," Chuck said. Horowitz smiled. "Sometimes, the best moments come when we don't plan them." Chuck looked down at the keys, then back at Horowitz. He gave a quiet nod. He wasn't sure what would happen, but he knew one thing. He would not walk away from the challenge. But Horowitz had one more surprise in store. What he asked Chuck to do next was bigger than anyone imagined. Building to the main event. Word got out fast. Vladimir Horowitz had invited a martial arts teacher to perform at his upcoming benefit. People in the music world started talking. Some were confused. Others were sure it was a joke. Many thought it was just a stunt to get attention. "A karate guy playing Rachmaninoff?" one person said. "Must be for fun." But Chuck didn't care. He went back into training, just like before. Only this time, he had help. Horowitz connected him with a piano coach who worked with young performers. The coach didn't treat Chuck like a beginner. He gave real feedback. He pushed him to polish every part of the piece. Chuck practiced even harder now. His days stayed the same. Karate in the morning, music at night. He listened to recordings. He watched videos. He worked on each measure with care. The sound became sharper. The emotion deeper. His fingers moved faster. His timing improved. The date was set. December 11th, 1965. The event would be held in the Cavendish Conservatory's main hall. The room could hold more than 300 guests. Many were rich, powerful, and known in the music world. Chuck didn't think about the crowd. He focused on the music. He didn't care if they laughed. He just wanted to keep his promise. The night of the performance, the hall filled quickly. People whispered and shook their heads. They came to see what Horowitz was planning. Some expected something funny. Others just wanted to be part of the story. Backstage, Chuck stayed calm. He warmed up his hands. He looked at the keys and thought of his mother. The noise outside didn't matter. The lights didn't matter. He knew what he came to do. Now it was time to play. The night everyone had been talking about finally arrived. The whole music world was about to witness something unforgettable. The climactic performance. The hall was full. Every seat taken. Lights dimmed as Vladimir Horowitz stepped onto the stage. He wore a calm smile and looked out at the crowd. Many people were still unsure why they were there. Some expected a mistake. Some expected to laugh. Horowitz raised his hand. "This evening," he said, "you will hear a performance from someone who understands more than notes. He understands silence, effort, and patience. Please welcome Mr. Chuck Norris." There were a few soft claps, nothing more. Chuck walked onto the stage without a smile. He wore a black shirt and slacks. His boots made no sound. He gave a quiet nod to the audience, then sat at the piano. He looked at the keys. For a few seconds, he didn't move. Then his hands began to play. The Rachmaninoff piece filled the room. It came with force, but never felt rushed. The deep chords echoed with strength. The soft notes carried sorrow. Each phrase had weight. Every sound felt like it had a story behind it. The room, once filled with doubt, now held stillness. Eyes stayed locked on the stage. No one coughed. No one whispered. People leaned forward, pulled in by the music. Chuck played with full focus. Each movement came from practice, pain, and memory. His hands moved with the same care he used in martial arts. Calm but strong. Clean but full of feeling. When the final note faded, the silence that followed was deep. People didn't move. Then one person stood and clapped. Others followed. Soon the whole room was on its feet. The applause rolled across the hall. No one laughed now, no one doubted. Chuck stood, gave a short bow, and left the stage. The moment had spoken for itself. What happened next changed how people saw Chuck forever. But his response to fame might surprise you even more. The aftermath and resolution. After the performance, the crowd stood and clapped for a long time. Some people had tears in their eyes. Others just nodded, amazed. There were no jokes, no smirks. What they saw and heard was real. Chuck had played with heart, strength, and control. It didn't matter where he came from or what he wore. That night, he was a musician. Backstage, Horowitz walked over with a warm smile. He shook Chuck's hand. "You played like someone who listens," he said. "Not just to the music, but to what's behind it." Reporters came in fast. Photos were taken. Stories were written. The next day, newspapers called Chuck's performance a surprise gift and a lesson in pure expression. Some called him a natural. Others said he brought something fresh to classical music. One headline read, "From fighter to maestro, Chuck Norris stuns classical world." People wanted more. Offers came from music halls and radio shows. Magazines asked for interviews. Chuck smiled, thanked them, and said no. He went back to his karate school, back to training and teaching. Music stayed in his life, but not in the spotlight. He had played when it mattered most. That was enough for him. A week later, he received a letter. It was from Horowitz. It said, "In music, many learn to play. Few learn to listen. You do both. You are not my student. You are my equal." Chuck kept the letter in his home. He didn't frame it. He didn't tell many people about it. But he read it often. The story faded from the news, but those who were there remembered. Not because of the name, not because of the fame. They remembered because for one night, a man stepped up with nothing to prove, just something to share. And he did. Chuck Norris didn't try to impress. He let the music speak. If this story surprised you, hit like, share it with someone who needs inspiration, and subscribe for more untold moments where legends rise in the most unexpected ways.